Hello, and welcome to People by People, the podcast that is centered around creative thoughts and actions and what you can do to optimize that. My name is Andrew Bastian, a musician, recording and mixing engineer, and producer. In the first mini-series, I'll be discussing what science, philosophy, and greater culture has discovered, and hopefully give you the tools to do your best work and find meaning in it. Episode 5, Impostor Syndrome. Even when there is ample proof of their achievement, why do those who suffer from imposter syndrome feel like frauds? They frequently credit their successes to outside factors or fleeting circumstances, including luck, excellent timing, or effort that they are unable to consistently invest, rather than recognizing their strengths and efforts. Pressure and personal expectations can make it difficult for someone to succeed in their academic or professional endeavors. So what causes imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome is generally caused by personality qualities, such as self-efficacy, perfectionism, and neuroticism. The foundation can be laid in competitive circumstances. For instance, a lot of people who later have emotions of imposterism had their parents place a lot of pressure on them to perform well in school when they were young. Some common characteristics of imposter syndrome include self-doubt, own success is sabotaged, contributions being undervalued, lack of confidence, the fear of failing, working too much and refusing to accept praise for accomplishments, and making comparisons with others. Here are some defined categories of imposter syndrome. The perfectionist. The urge to live up to impossibly high standards is shared by the perfectionist. Perfectionism is fueled by the imposter syndrome as people strive for perfection to avoid being exposed as frauds. The pursuit of perfection hinders productivity and increases performance anxiety. It can therefore be a significant obstacle to success. While having high expectations might spur us to actions, our concentration on perfection can be unfavorable. The constant quest of perfection by the perfectionist leads to excessive self-criticism, anxiety, and fatigue. You might never release something into the world if you keep waiting for it to be perfect. It must eventually be sufficient. Signs you may be the perfectionist type include: you micromanage everything. You don't know how to delegate tasks. You obsess over little details. You struggle with decision-making. You have high standards and unrealistic expectations. You have an incredible fear of failure or making mistakes. So what should you do if you're a perfectionist? Overcoming perfectionism is a process that requires self-awareness, self-compassion, and a willingness to embrace imperfection. By setting realistic goals and expectations, practicing self-care, and prioritizing progress over perfection, you can break free from the constraints of perfectionism and achieve a healthier, more balanced life. The superhuman. Superhumans desire to accomplish more and more, whereas perfectionists are constantly trying to improve their performance. Superhumans are high achievers who place a great deal of pressure on themselves to attain success in every aspect of life. They believe that in order to accomplish all they do, they must work harder than others. A perfect fit for this imposter syndrome type is the workaholic. There are certain indicators that someone is overly self-critical and may be superhuman, since they can never accomplish enough. Signs you may be the superhuman type include: you're not good at taking constructive criticism. When you're not working, you feel anxious, and you feel bad for taking breaks or engaging in leisure activities. You place a great deal of pressure on yourself to provide your finest work. So what should you do if you're the superhuman? It can be difficult to get over the superhuman imposter syndrome type, but it is doable. Recognizing that being excellent at everything is not a realistic aim is the first step. Everyone makes errors and fails at times. Reframe your perspective on your accomplishments as well. Recognize your own abilities and effort, not external variables, when determining success. You may increase your self-confidence and self-esteem by doing this. To combat the superhuman imposter syndrome type, set reasonable goals for yourself and make time for rest and self-care. Recognize that self-worth and productivity are not always correlated. Taking breaks can boost productivity and general well-being. The natural genius. A person who has natural genius imposter syndrome believes that their achievement is completely attributable to their inherent aptitude or intelligence. A natural genius is someone for whom achievement has always come naturally and without any effort on their part. They, therefore, had impossible expectations of themselves. Therefore, it can be quite overwhelming for them when they enter a highly competitive workplace, since they are compelled to challenge themselves. Signs you may be the natural genius type include: you've always had success on your side. When you have a setback, your confidence falls greatly. You think that success results from an innate talent rather than through practice and hard work. You hold yourself to an extremely high standard and are judgmental of any potential roadblocks to your achievement. So what do the natural geniuses have to do? It might be challenging for a natural genius to accept that success is not simply determined by skill and intelligence. Instead, it mixes perseverance, practice, and chance. Imposter syndrome of the natural genius variety may be particularly harmful because it fosters an unreasonable expectation of perfection and makes you feel like a phony when you falter. Through introspection and rephrasing of unfavorable self-talk, you can get rid of the imposter condition. You may acquire a more accurate perception of your talents and discover your strengths and flaws by doing self-reflection. Instead of thinking of yourself as brilliant, think of yourself as a work in progress. The soloist. Feelings of independence and the drive to succeed solely on one's own are the traits of the soloist imposter syndrome kind. People who feel they must do everything on their own and who think that asking for assistance or support is a sign of weakness are affected by this sort of imposter syndrome. Due to their tendency to feel alone and overburdened, soloist types frequently experience emotions of inadequacy and self-doubt. This sort of imposter syndrome is more likely to affect those who identify as tough individuals. They put their freedom and liberty above adhering to societal conventions. Rough individualists tend to have a strong feeling of independence and may get uncomfortable when they need to rely on others for help. How do you identify if you're the soloist type? Feeling as though everything must be done by yourself. Feeling as though you are inadequate if you ask for assistance. Networking is difficult. Having trouble receiving constructive feedback. So what do the soloists need to do? In order to overcome the soloist imposter syndrome type, you must first determine the underlying reason for your urge to be so independent and to succeed only on your own. You may then start creating a support system, learning how to delegate, cultivating self-compassion, and starting to celebrate achievements. Though it can take some time and work, conquering imposter syndrome can result in increased self-assurance, fulfillment, and success on both a personal and professional level. The expert. People who have gained specialized knowledge and abilities in their industry sometimes suffer from the expert imposter syndrome type. That covers educated individuals with advanced degrees such as physicians, attorneys, and scientists. Why? They believe they should be experts in their industry since they spent so much time and energy becoming educated and trained. However, they continue to have self-doubt and fear that they lack the skills necessary to successfully complete all their work's demands. Identifying the expert type includes having the impression that you must be an expert at every procedure stage, experiencing a persistent urge to acquire education and certification, despite having experience, feeling like a phony, feeling stressed and having trouble getting anything done. And how do we overcome feeling like the expert? Finding possibilities for self-development and learning on your own is a great strategy to get over the expert type imposter syndrome. You may increase your confidence and knowledge by doing this. Finding challenges can help you build additional skill sets and overcome emotions of inadequacy, whether you enroll in courses, seminars, or professional networks. The development of a support network is essential for overcoming expert imposter syndrome. You can get perspective and a sense of understanding by being open and honest with trustworthy friends and family members about your problems and disappointments. Recognizing your successes and accomplishments, no matter how great or tiny, is also crucial. You may recognize and celebrate your development by journaling and keeping track of your successes, which will increase your self-confidence and self-esteem. So what should we do about our imposter syndrome? The perfectionist, the superhuman, the natural genius, the soloist, and the expert are the 5 imposter syndrome subtypes. Although the varieties differ in appearance, they all give you a false sense of accomplishment. Although imposter syndrome can act as a pitfall, it can be overcome. The sense of inadequacy, self-doubt, or insecurity keeps us from reaching our objectives. Young people who have a failure to launch syndrome postpone becoming independent adults because they don't want to fail. Although high achievers frequently experience imposter syndrome, it affects people of different ages, genders, and socioeconomic backgrounds. From job interviews to public speaking occasions, imposter syndrome can happen in a variety of circumstances. Because it causes sleep disturbances, sadness, anxiety, psychological anguish, uncertainty, and poor performance at work, it is detrimental. Recognizing the symptoms of imposter syndrome is the first step in resolving it. People who suffer from imposter syndrome frequently believe they are unworthy of their accomplishments and do not belong in positions of authority or success. A person has to alter their perspective of their own talents in order to overcome imposter syndrome. Recognizing one's accomplishments and competence is important for imposters, since it helps them remember that they earned their position in their academic or professional setting. Imposters sometimes feel as though they don't belong. Instead of evaluating their own accomplishments in relations to others, people should keep their attention on themselves. People with imposterism, like perfectionists, frequently place a lot of pressure on themselves to do everyday assignments perfectly because they worry that any error would indicate to others that they are not competent or intelligent enough for their role. They continue to put themselves under enormous strain because they think they won't achieve without it, and instead of rewarding themselves, they simply think about the subsequent assignment at hand. It can be challenging to stop this pattern, but doing so often requires reminders that no one is perfect and that everyone should strive to do what they can do to be successful. You're listening to People by People. Catch you next time.